Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Rudy Rivera. Welcome to my channel, Conversations with Rudy Rivera. In an effort to aid our brother Ukrainians in this crisis, I'm interviewing a number of people I know in the Ukraine who are encountering the difficulties. Well, that's an understatement. The atrocities by Putin. I'll say Putin, not necessarily the Russian people. Sergey, you may disagree with me on that, but that's part of the conversations. We're hoping you can clarify a number of issues for us because there's a lot of confusion, at least in my mind, in the United States from what the news media says. Sergiy Gryshko is a partner with the international law firm. And interestingly, he did work for my company a number of years ago. In fact, one of the first cases I handled was out of the Ukraine, and you did an exceptional job for me on that. I had a previous firm, I hired them, and when I hired you, things got done. So, Sergey, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be on my show.
Thank you, Rudy. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here, and thank you very much for coming out with this great idea. I would like to start off by thanking you personally and the people of the United States for your continued support of Ukraine.
Oh, it's the least we can do. It's the least we can do. I was in Mexico City a few weeks ago, and as I'm walking down the street, every Sunday they close off the street near my hotel. There are maybe about 75 Mexicans of Ukraine descent who were protesting at that time the threatened invasion of Ukraine by I'll say Putin. I thought if they're protesting in Mexico, where else are they protesting? Why can't? So that's when I thought, let me help. What can I do? And the first thing I did was posted that video on my on LinkedIn. And I thought, I'm going to try to do what I can do at my end. I'm not in the thick of the battle, but from where I am, let me see what I can do. So I want to start off with asking you, Sergey, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living. I know you're a lawyer, but what you're doing now, considering this war that's being waged.
Yes. Well, thank you, Rudy. As you said, I'm a lawyer. I'm a partner with Redcliff Partners, a law firm based in Kyiv. I'm head of litigation and arbitration practice in Kyiv. There's not much to do for us at the moment, as you can imagine. Courts actually don't hear any cases at the moment for obvious reasons. But the team, we are working remotely. And actually, believe it or not, but this experience of COVID lockdowns has helped us a lot because we've now accustomed to working remotely. And I have to say that the productivity has grown considerably, to my surprise and to everyone's surprise, actually. So now I'm in Kyiv, sitting in my flat. We've just had the end of the air alert has been announced. So I don't expect to be to see any bombs falling on Kyiv in the nearest time, thankfully. So we had alert at 6:55, I think. Now it's over. So I was born and grew up in the city of Kharkiv, which is in the east of Ukraine, and it's the second largest city. And I think we're going to see some footage from Kharkiv, recent footage of Kharkiv being heavily bombarded by the Russian troops. I grew up in a Russian-speaking family, even though my grandparents were Ukrainian-speaking, especially on my mother's parents were Ukrainian-speaking. We're actually representatives of Ukrainian intelligentsia, so to say. My granddad was an actor in Ukrainian theater. My granny was a teacher, a chemistry teacher in school, and my grandparents on the daddy's side were engineers, actually, in Kharkiv. So it was all very peaceful, and we were raised in this spirit that all people are brothers, all nations are brothers. Actually, in one of the streets, which was close to the place where I lived in Kharkiv, was called, believe it or not, the Friendship of Nations Street. So it was all about friendship. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, things still remained. I believe they continued in a way they used to be. There was no, no hatred or anything like that towards Russians in Ukraine. That's for sure. I cannot say for Russia. I believe that there were no particularly bad feelings towards Ukrainians in Russia either. I think something has changed. Something has changed over time, and the particular watershed came in 2004. 2004, when Mr. Yanukovych lost the election, following the protest which came to be known as the Orange Revolution. And actually, the only foreign leader who congratulated Mr. Yanukovych on winning the election, and who did it twice, was Mr. Putin, which did not come as much as a surprise, because Mr. Putin was openly supporting Yanukovych. And at that time, Mr. Putin was seen as a young, progressive leader of democratic Russia in 2004. It is hard to believe that now, but this is how it looked like back in 2004.
Well, there's an expression that says absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely. I think this is a great example which proves that expression right.
It is. I think he views himself as invincible. He views himself as above the law, and I would say even in some cases above God, in thinking that he's the absolute and possibly divine ruler. What a number of my friends don't really understand is why invade the Ukraine when, I mean, there are theories. He doesn't want them to be part of NATO. Maybe he wants the natural resources. What's your perspective on why Putin is taking this type of action?
Well, I think this is a $1 million question, as they say in the US. Probably $1 billion question. My personal view, even though I don't pretend to know the real answer, I'm not privy to Mr. Putin's thinking and Mr. Putin's decision making. But my view is that the key to understanding Putin is actually was very well deciphered, if you like, by Zbigniew Brzezinski, the national security advisor to President Carter, in his 1997 book, The Grand Chessboard. And this is where he said that without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be Eurasian empire. And as years moved on, Mr. Putin, who was portraying himself, who was presenting himself as a democratic leader, he became more and more imperialistic, and the Russian policy has become more and more imperialistic. And as it did, it became obvious that they need resources to continue with their imperialistic paths and their chauvinistic ways.
And Ukraine has a number of natural resources.
Yeah, but it's not only natural resources. I think the Ukraine's biggest resource is Ukrainian people. And you need to go back in time to the Peter the Great time to understand that the reforms of the Russian Orthodox Church under Peter the Great were all made by some Feofan Prokopovich, who was Ukrainian. about and the marine regulation, which the Russian historians were so proud of, was actually written by Ukrainians. About 80% of all scientific elite in the Russian Empire was Ukrainians. The other 20% were Germans, actually. You would find.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, because this is not very much advertised, and it's only recently that I found out myself, when some history books have started to be published on various topics. We come to realize that actually, the very Russian project, Russia, right, Peter's Russia, was conceived by Ukrainian elites to save Ukraine from its historical antagonists. First and foremost, Turkey, or Crimean Khanate back then in 17th century, and the Kingdom of Poland, which was called Rzeczpospolita back then. The idea was.
But what does it matter now in the sense? I mean, you're talking about history in the past. Russia is already a powerhouse, okay?
Yes.
And I mean, I guess maybe it's maybe why the Russians defended Stalingrad at all costs, because symbolically they didn't want Stalingrad to fall. And so maybe could it be that Putin says, I have to absorb this last piece of what was once the great Russian bloc?
Well, I think the problem is that they badly need Ukrainian expertise and Ukrainian people to pursue their imperialistic attempts. You have to realize that actually Russia is in complete decline as a state. It has, despite they may be showing off and showing something else, showing some bright pictures from the streets of Moscow, but the truth of the matter that as a state, as a nation, Russian Federation is in decline.
And in decline economically, well, from an economic point of view?
In all senses, even economically, because their economy is all about oil and gas. They don't produce anything that much, and some weapons. They produce some weapons, but as we can see, and already in the 10 days of this war, those weapons are not as good as they advertise them to be, actually. And you need probably, again, I'm going back to history, because this is all about history. This war, I think, actually, the preparation for this war started in July 2021 when Putin published his article. You probably read it, about Russia and Ukraine being one people, that there is no such thing as Ukrainian people.
Yet they speak two different languages. They're two different languages.
They do. And do you know what their response is to this? Oh, it's Ukrainian is a non-existent language. It was invented by Austrian general staff during the First World War to defeat Russia. This is serious. This is serious. They seriously claim this. On a political level, of course. No serious scientist would say that. No serious linguist would claim this. But this is what their mantra is among politicians. This is incredible. And if we go back to the Cold War years, to the space race, the moon race in particular, the one person who was behind the Soviet space program and whose rockets Russians still use to fly to the International Space Station was Sergiy. What? Sorry?
Is Ukrainian?
Was Ukrainian, Sergiy Korolev, absolutely, from Zhytomyr. And actually, if you ever when you come to Ukraine after our victory, Rudy, I hope, you absolutely have to go to Zhytomyr, the city of Zhytomyr, which is just 100 kilometers away from Kyiv to the west, where they have a great museum of space research, which is named after Mr. Korolev. So he was Ukrainian. He was one person who was actually doing the job of the entire NASA in the States. So, and I think the reason why it was the Americans who walked the moon first was that Mr. Korolev died during his surgery in 1967. And without him, the Soviet space program could not continue at the same pace. And the reason why he died during the surgery is because his jaw was broken in Gulag by the Stalin secret police. He was being tortured, and they broke his jaw. So the doctors could not open his mouth properly to intubate him and to make sure he was breathing. So he died at the surgery. And you probably will remember Mr. Khrushchev saying that we produce rockets like sausages. Do you know
I also remember him saying to Kennedy, "We will bury you," and stamping his shoe.
Yeah. Well, this was an exaggeration, I think, as was the sausages thing.
Yeah.
But the site where those rockets were produced in industrial numbers was actually in Dnipro, which is in Ukraine as well, sitting in Ukraine, the Yuzhne. So you will see that Ukraine is home to much of the industry which Russia badly needs to revive its imperialist ambitions.
So rather than negotiating with Ukraine for these resources, paying scientists to come work, make it attractive to work, he says, "I'm just going to take over the Ukraine."
Exactly.
And invent lies, revisionist history. You tell a lie big enough, people start to believe it. We have the same issue in the United States. You say something and people start to believe it. There are these conspiracy theories all over it. I think Putin has been, well, not Putin, but his people have been really good at maneuvering propaganda and creating these lies. A dear friend of mine is also Ukrainian. She came to the United States at 14 as a refugee, lived in several refugee camps. She's a lawyer for a major insurance company, and her access to Russian TV station says nothing wrong. Ukrainians are supposedly opening, their arms to the Russian soldiers coming in. And I think some of the other lies have been, to the soldiers, you're going on military exercises. There's no war. The Ukrainians are going to welcome you. And I know Putin greatly underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainian people.
Absolutely.
And a president who had people maybe didn't have a lot of hope for because he was a comedic actor is now turned into the hero of the century.
Exactly. And actually, I have to confess, I didn't vote for Mr. Zelensky. I thought it was a bad choice. But I still think it wasn't the best choice. But I have to confess that he has absolutely exceeded any expectations. Absolutely, he's been doing a great job, and I hope he will continue to do that. It's incredible. But I think the problem with Russian propaganda is that it's such big lies that they believe it themselves. And I think the reason why Mr. Putin underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainian people was because he genuinely came to believe that there is no such thing as Ukrainian people. He just believed that those are oppressed Russians, oppressed by the Nazis, junta, whoever in Kyiv, and they're just waiting to be liberated by the Russian army. I think he seriously believed that.
They're counting the days. They say, we are counting the days before the Russians come in and liberate us, right?
Yeah, exactly. We cannot tolerate this anymore. Come and save us, brothers. Yes.
It's amazing. Well, you are living in the thick of it, as an American expression, in the thick of it. You were gracious enough to send me some videos. I'm going to put them on. Can you describe what they show? I mean, obviously they show violent acts, but let me start with this one.
Опять, короче, район где-то то ли парк Шевченко, то ли... О, летит,
Yeah,
летит,
this is
блядь.
the center of
Сука!
Kyiv.
Твою мать!
This is the, I think the caliber missile,
Пизда,
the
блядь!
cruising missile hitting the
Ёбаные
center
суки!
of the city. I think it was actually one of the Kharkiv University campuses which was hit by the cruising missile. So it was shot accidentally by some bystander, from his own window, some Kharkiver who was probably who started shooting video, hearing the sounds of shelling, perhaps, and bombings. He was just shooting with his own phone, and he caught on video this moment of this cruising missile hitting the university in the center of Kharkiv. Why on earth would you need to bomb a university?
That's the $1 million question. It's not a military target. Innocent people who have nothing to do with the military are dying. What about this video?
I think it's we should start from the beginning. I think it's the end of the video, actually. Okay, yeah, there it is. This is the headquarters of the Kharkiv governor, the provincial governor in Ukraine, and this is again the cruising missile hitting. Probably it was targeting this building. But because Russians are lacking intelligent people to properly target their missiles, it hits just nearby, thankfully. And about 6 people, over 20 people were reported dead by this hit. Again, it was 8 in the morning. People were getting to the job, and they were hit by this missile. It's again an act of, this is not a military object. This is the center of the city. Why would you need to bomb it? I don't know. It's just incredible.
I have one more video to show you, and that's
this is one of the central areas of Kharkiv again. And those are grads, so-called grads. Those are unguided missiles hitting residential buildings. This is residential area. You can see that blocks of flats being hit by missiles.
I don't see any military installations there.
Not to my knowledge, I don't think so. Even if there were some, they were not of any significance. They basically were barracks, perhaps just barracks. There were no military. There was no military equipment or weapons or anything. It's residential area, almost in the city center. So no.
Well, and now we have these slides that you sent me. Let me remove this. But you also sent me these slides, and I'm not able to put them up. We can get to that. Well, what's this of?
This is the thermobaric explosion. Again, I think it was the airport which was the target of this thermobaric explosion, where it uses a cloud of explosive substance to produce a stronger explosion. So it's much, much more dangerous and devastating than the usual blast. So it's so-called vacuum blasts. Yeah, it uses oxygen, the external oxygen, to burn. So it is extremely deadly.
And has a wide range of destruction.
It does indeed. it does.
I was a political science major, and before I went to law school, back then, at the age of the dinosaurs, when I was going to study law, most people went into political science, thought that was a logical choice. And I remember writing a paper about why I thought, and I wish I could find it, but why I thought the Soviet Union might fall.
Interesting.
It had to do with my reading of Karl Marx, that when Karl Marx wrote, he did not take into account the middle class or the middle sector. It was the haves and the have-nots. And also, I think what he failed to take into account was the fact that people are, now I use the term greedy and ambitious, but not in a bad sense. People want the best things in life. They want to be fed, they want to be safe.
Yes.
And when they have a vested interest in a society, they don't want it to fall. You may not be rich, but you have your house, you have food, you have a car, you have a job, those things. And at that point, I don't think the Soviet Union was providing those things. And what I saw happening was that the elite was taking advantage of all these luxuries, and the people got fed up, which is why I think led to the fall of the Soviet bloc at that point. Now you see Putin trying to bring it back together with the same type of corruption with his oligarchs, and he's not quite saying it in altruistic terms. He's just saying they're invading us, but isn't that really his end game?
I think so. I don't think he's got a great plan, actually. I have to say, even though the Soviet Union failed to provide its citizens with proper means of living, I think the one thing that the Soviet Union excelled at was stability. So that everyone knew that they will get their jobs, they will go to the same office tomorrow, the same factory, plants tomorrow, steel mill, and they will be, there will always be work to do. It all ended quite abruptly in 1999. But the Soviet Union also provided some basic minimum living standards, which I think modern Russia does not, by and large. Of course, if you speak about larger cities like Moscow or St. Petersburg or Yekaterinburg, I think, yes, there they do provide some basic, standards, but not in the large Russia, especially in the urban areas. They are in decline, and the reason for this is exactly the cronyism of Mr. Putin and incredible corruption. But now the Russian corruption has come to be an unexpected ally of Ukraine, because I understand that the Russian army generals were stealing so much that there was nothing left to modernize the army. So on papers, the Russian army was the third strongest in the world, using the most modern vehicles, equipment, and so on, weapons. But in fact, I probably should have sent you those videos. There's a video making rounds on the web showing a Ukrainian mechanic examining a captured Russian vehicle, and he says, and he shows everything. He shows it's older than me, perhaps. It's in very bad condition. It has a very old radio station, and he says, "You mechanics cry. We don't have anything like that in Ukraine. This is what is left of Soviet Union, and it hasn't been repaired for 30 years. And this is what they sent to Ukraine, although perhaps officially on paper it looks like the most modern fighting vehicle, armored vehicle ever." And I think it's great. I think this is where the Russian corruption that Mr. Navalny has been so much protesting about and making so much noise about is actually a good thing.
You know what I think is a good thing? That everyone has a cell phone. We're able to capture history. Before the internet, you could make these outrageous lies, but now Everyone who has a cell phone is a director and a movie producer.
Exactly.
And all this stuff is just coming out that I think has aided the Ukrainians in this way, because it's a way of the truth coming out.
Yes, absolutely.
Otherwise, how would we know?
Yeah.
How far are you from the bombings? Are these bombings close to your house?
Those bombings which which you showed are quite far away. They're in Kharkiv. I'm in Kyiv now. But just yesterday, when I was getting some stuff for the defenders, I heard a cruising missile being shot down over Kyiv. So we're quite close. We feel it. Not as bad as Kharkiv, of course. But we hear it, and we woke up today at 5 a.m. to the air alert. So,
well, even if the invasion, even if Putin's soldiers come in and they take over the Ukraine, take over all the major cities, I believe you're still going to have pockets of Ukrainians still fighting.
Yes.
You're not. Yes. I don't see the Ukrainians giving up. No. I can see Molotov cocktails going. I can see, the basically guerrilla warfare in the Ukraine.
Absolutely. This is what's going to happen. You probably know that when the Soviets grabbed Western Ukraine in 1943, the guerrilla warfare continued for over 15 years there until 1960s. Well into 1960s. And just recently, a pal of mine, a prosecutor in Kharkiv, told me that his seniors investigated the last anti-Soviet guerrilla gang in Kharkiv region was liquidated in 1972 and being led by the local party functionary. Can you believe this?
I can't believe it. That's what's strange about it is I truly can't believe it. And but you must live in fear every day. Your wife, Ukrainians live in fear. You never know when they're going to come in, and you really don't know. Well, I guess you have some idea of the brutality of what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, certain people are going to be targeted. But he can't kill everybody in the Ukraine. So otherwise it defeats the whole purpose of taking over the Ukraine in a sense.
Yes.
Which would be, I guess, it would be a form of genocide. But he's between a rock and a hard place now. How does he save face? I don't see him saving face. He comes in as this mighty Russia to invade Ukraine, which is probably the largest democracy of the Soviet bloc right now, is defiant to this so-called superpower. How does he get out of it with saving face? He can't just back out, right? In his mind, I'm sure. I don't know. I have the talks. Are the talks done, or are they still talking?
No. They're still talking. I completely second this. I don't see Putin being able to keep his face when he has to withdraw. And I think there will be a point at which the Russian troops will need to withdraw, because the war has not been going particularly well for them. Just before starting the video and preparing for this interview, I've read the morning news, the morning digest, and it appears that the Ukrainian forces started the counteroffensive on the eastern front near Kharkiv. So we're pushing the Russians out of Ukraine, and I don't know how on earth he could now sell this bullshit to his fellow Russians, that his victorious leader of Russia has just been defeated by people which doesn't even exist. So it's very difficult choice, and that makes probably him even more dangerous. And
more
my
desperate.
fear,
And more desperate.
and more desperate, more dangerous because he's more desperate. Exactly.
Mhm.
And my biggest fear is that he might resort to using some sort of weapons of mass destruction.
Well, and also the fact that a comedian who's president is showing more courage and resolve than he is.
Exactly.
And-
This
and
is an insult one in of itself, right? It's incredible. Just some comedian who used to, and I probably can say this, who used to entertain people in the Kremlin palace, now is defeating him, now is humiliating him, basically, with his defiance. This is the humiliation that people like Putin are not very good at handling, I think. Now
Well,
we have another air alert, but I think we'll continue.
you have an airlift?
Air alert, air alert.
Okay,
You can hear the
alert,
sirens roaring.
Well, how has this affected your practice of law? Obviously, there's no litigation going on. You're the head of dispute and litigation for a major law firm in Europe. How is
Yes.
this affecting you?
It's well, as I said, we don't have any court hearings at the moment. Everything is frozen. I think that for now we will continue in this frozen condition, and when things are more certain, the practice will resume. The normal practice of law will
Mhm.
resume. At this point, we're doing a lot for the government. We're writing various position papers. We're doing a legal analysis for the government, and so on. This is about 80% of what we do now.
And well, as from a legal point of view, would you classify Putin as a war criminal?
Absolutely, absolutely. Putin and his entourage are all war criminals. And I really hope that we will see them at some point at the war tribunal, like a Nuremberg tribunal, where they will confess to their crimes. And well, I'm not that bloodthirsty. I don't want them to be executed. Probably they can spend the rest of their lives in prison. But we definitely need justice. We need to bring justice.
I find that difficult because it's one thing when you're talking about war criminals from smaller countries, for example, who can be captured and brought to justice. But I find it difficult that, even if Putin pulls out, that we're going to go in, or somebody's going to go in, take him out, take him to the Hague, the International Court, and prosecute him for war crimes, unless there's a revolt in Russia where he's
True.
removed from office and the Russians say, here, you deal with him.
True. I think this is the most realistic scenario. As much as I want, or as much as I want to dream of Ukrainian commandos descending on Moscow and capturing him and bringing them to Kyiv or to the Hague for trial, I don't think it's going to happen, I have to say. But I think the revolt in Russia and surrendering Putin and his closest accomplices to justice, I think would be a great way out for the Russian elites who want to keep their riches.
And that's I think it's going to be Putin's downfall in this sense. Biden and a number of the other countries are going after the oligarchs, going after their pocketbooks.
Yes.
And at a certain point, they may turn on them. In Latin American history, oftentimes presidents have been deposed or removed by the military.
Yes, true.
By the people who actually hold the real power, in a sense, and say, we have to get this crazy person out of office, or this person is contrary to our interests. We have to either kill him or get him out.
Unfortunately, Russia has no history of military coup d'etat. Unfortunately for our purposes. So to
Oh,
say.
for your purposes, yes.
Yes. I think the only military coup d'etat, well, not the only military coup d'etat, the last military coup d'etat in Russia was in early 19th century when Pavel I, the Russian emperor, was deposed by the guards, by the elite military corps. And I think he was strangled by his scarf, actually, and beaten to death by the ashtray, actually. No, by the ash box, but it was over 200 years ago. So I'm not sure the tradition is still there, but realistically speaking, I think this is the best option for Russia and Russians.
How effective do you think the sanctions are?
I think they are quite effective in bringing misery to Russian people and to oligarchs, to the Putin's clique. But I'm not sure they are very effective at stopping the war. Putin is not going to stop because Russian people are starving. This is not what's going to stop him. I think the only way he can be stopped is by military means and by deposing him.
And why does NATO not want to intervene? I mean, I realize Ukraine is not part of NATO, but this is so atrocious. Why don't you think they will intervene?
I have no idea. Just yesterday, Minister Kuleba, Ukrainian foreign minister, said that we thought NATO was strong and the European Union was weak. Now we see that the European Union is actually strong and NATO is weak. I think the answer is they don't, is the official answer they give. We don't want to be dragged into the Third World War. But the truth of the matter is the Third World War is already underway.
It has started. It has started.
Yes.
I've heard commentaries about somebody shoots a bullet in Poland, like they killed the Archduke Ferdinand that started, World War One.
Yeah.
That could start World War III.
Yeah, it has. I think it has. They haven't acknowledged that, and they refuse to recognize the obvious. But this is there already. So yeah, they'd better come to terms with the reality and start doing something about it before it's too late.
And what do you think China's position is in all of this? The Chinese have been somewhat quiet in all this.
Oh yes, it's incredible. It's incredible. They're enjoying the Olympics and the Paralympics now. I think China is watching closely, and I think the only winner of this situation will be China. Actually, they will become, as the oil exports from Russia will be blocked to Western Europe and North America. China will be the only large buyer of Russian oil, which means they will buy it at a much lower price than previously. They will be the only. China will be the only source of capital for Russian economy, or foreign source of capital for Russian economy. China will be probably reassured by the indecisiveness of the West to capture Taiwan. Because I'm not an expert in Chinese politics, but my impression is that Mr. Xi is going the same way as Mr. Putin. He is growing incredibly imperialistic, with increasing ambitions, and he sees China as a new empire of the East. So he wants to be an emperor. And to be an emperor, he needs a small, victorious war. And what better targets will you have than Taiwan? A small, tiny island just outside of China.
Well, that's the subject for another, interview. But China has had its eye on Taiwan for a long, long time.
And now they have appetite for this. Now they have
and now they've got precedent with what's happening in with Putin. And they see economic sanctions, but there's no military intervention except the fight put up by the Ukrainian people.
Exactly. So if the West has not intervened in Ukrainian war, will it intervene in the Taiwan war? Probably not.
Well, and that's the $1 million question, because anymore there is a lack of predictability. So remember, for the longest time, we worried about North Korea. We worried about Iran and nuclear weapons. And now, and I don't mind going on record saying it, now the crazy guy is Putin.
Exactly.
And
he's not crazy. It's just he showed that he's crazy. I think he was crazy. He's been crazy for a very long time. It just no one really wanted to accept that. People were dismissed as panickers, as warmongers, scaremongers in the West, who said, well, look, Putin is waging a new Cold War in the West. Now this Cold War has become a hot war, actually. And it's only now that people have come to realize what kind of an insane person he is, what kind of a lunatic he is. And still, there is not much resolve, not enough resolve to stop him.
Well, he's manifested himself more so than ever before. I mean, in the past, people suspected, but they weren't sure. And now they're sure. In the past, he would poison people. Of course, you can never prove it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but I mean that it had what they call in the United States sometimes plausible deniability, But now there's no plausible deniability. He's crazy, right?
He's crazy.
And so now everything has been exposed, and what happens. So now there's focus taken away from North Korea. There's focus taken away from Iran. Who knows what they'll be able to do? Maybe they'll be stockpiling. Maybe they'll be busy while everyone's busy somewhere else. I mean, that I see could be another potential world conflict. And this goes beyond the Cold War. During the Cold War, U.S. and Russia hated. We had the communist, fear in the United States, and you had the McCarthy era. But this is well beyond that. This is to the point of another war starting. Yes. This is to the point of a person who's president, who's really a dictator. He's ruled Russia for 20 years. And I say rule intentionally, for 20 years. And I've even talked to people, this is anecdotal information, that he just comes into a company and says, oh, I'm taking over.
Oh, really?
See you later. I mean, he's amassed an incredible amount of wealth.
Yes.
And that's, also something that's said, his multi-million dollar house in Sochi, and, all his friends are living high on the hog. So my hope is that when you hit the friends in the pocketbook, that might cause something. And maybe the thing to do, honestly, you and I as lawyers, often, I manage litigation all over the world. As you know, we had a case together, the Verkhovna Rada in the city of Kyiv. Remember, it was the city hall property that was bought to build apartments there. Now you have my train of thought is that now you got this new reality. Who can do business there? Who can do business there?
In Russia or in Ukraine?
Well, in Russia.
In Russia, I wouldn't imagine. You have to be as crazy as Putin to go to the business there. That's for sure. I mean, they've tried to create this display of good corporate governance and the rule of law for the foreign investors for many years, but now they've the masks are off, right? What we see is unrefined, incredibly brutal fascist regime, which is not going to tolerate anyone, just anyone who opposes it, and not just opposes it, who's not loyal enough. You don't need to oppose. You just if you just show you're not loyal enough, you're done. And and in there, and it will be an increasing. You have to show increasingly how loyal you are, probably. So it's I wouldn't advise anyone to go to do business in Russia now. And actually, I would advise everyone to wind down all their operations and leave Russia as soon as possible while they can. They can, because I think later it will be just impossible.
I saw an interesting interview with the president, and I thought it was an unfair question by a Western journalist.
Yeah.
Trying to put him on the spot. And the question was, well, why were you caught off guard? Like blaming him for Russia coming in. And that's what irritates me about journalists sometimes. They ask these questions that, are geared towards, I don't know what, but I thought it was a dumb question. And I thought, your president is very savvy with the media.
Yes.
He knows how to use the media, and he's used it effectively. And his response was, well, you think we're going to tell everybody how we're going to prepare against the Russians? And I thought that was well done. That was a good thing. So, you often have to wonder about our Western journalists too, in what they're saying. In your ideal world, obviously you want the Ukraine, free of the Russians or free of Putin. What would you do differently? I mean, what would you like to see? Well, what would you do differently that's being done? And what else would you like to see done besides the obvious, the airspace? I mean, you're obviously in the thick of it because you're writing position papers, you're informed of the politics, you have your pulse on it. What message would you want to give the people in the West? Like, wake up and think about this, right?
Yes. Well, I would say that in the ideal world, I would like Ukraine to join NATO, and the European Union, even though I have my doubts about the NATO now. But ideally, I would still think that it's a great idea. And I think that I would like the Europeans to accept Ukrainians as their fellows, as belonging to your European family, and not just Ukrainians, because Moldovans are Europeans as much as Ukrainians are, or as much as Austrians are for that purpose. Georgians are Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
We need to think about Central Asia as well, because in Central Asia, people are suffering from atrocious authoritarian regimes as well. Places like Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan, for instance. So Tajikistan. There are things to do and a lot to do. Europe has to finally become mindful of its own political weight, not just economic weight. It has to become a subject of geopolitics, not just geoeconomy, if you like. And I think to a certain extent, this understanding has already come, or so I want to say, but I sincerely hope it has. One thing I want to tell you, actually, as you asked me, I recall that in Brussels in 2009, I went to a conference, and I was speaking to a nice Belgian girl who was an interpreter at the conference. And I asked her a rather straightforward question: would you like Ukraine to join the European Union? And she was in her early 20s, so probably she couldn't remember the Cold War and this threat of the nuclear holocaust in the 1980s. And she said, "Oh no!" And I said, "Why?" And she went, well, because Russia would drop a nuclear bomb on us. Again, where did she get this idea from? This is probably because the mood in Europe, probably with some help from Russian propaganda people and agents, was that Ukraine belonged to that Russian sphere of influence. And this thinking, this Cold War thinking of divided world, well divided into spheres of influence, was still so, and probably is still so entrenched in the minds of ordinary people that, and elites as well, that it makes very difficult for them to face the obvious and make necessary judgment. And
well, there are people who are more expert than I am as to why certain countries can join NATO and why they can't. There are also rules as to when a country can become part of the European Union. I personally think some of these rules, are arbitrary.
Absolutely.
For example, in the case of Romania, I mean, one of the conditions that Romania become part of the European Union was to eliminate international adoptions.
Yes.
And it was, due to one person who was part of the European Parliament who wanted to, shut down adoptions. Thousands of American families were adopting Romanian kids from orphanages. Yeah. So you have these rules that they like they're like when you're a kid, that guck that you play with,
Yes.
it goes through your fingers. What are these rules? And are they applied to some and not applied to others? I mean, that's really the issue. In my mind, there's no clarity. And somebody may say, well, Rudy, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, it probably won't be the first time. And it may not be the last time, but I'm looking at it as somebody who's somewhat educated, and looking at the outside, it makes no sense to me what the criteria is. I see no reason why, Ukraine shouldn't be part of NATO, except for the fear of basically Russian interference or, Russian repercussion. It makes no sense. Now, somebody may get on and give me all kinds of academic reasons why, and they say, well, you're an idiot. And I said, but I don't care. That's the beauty of America. Even idiots can have opinion. You see that all over the place, right?
Exactly.
What do you think about our famous ex-president Trump saying that Putin's move was genius? Oh, everyone rolls their eyes. Sir, everyone rolls their eyes with that. Okay, it's genius.
Okay. Well, I think Trump secretly loves Putin. I might regret saying this, but I think he secretly admires Putin.
They have a bromance, right? A bromance.
A bromance, exactly, because he sees Mr. Putin as a role model, I think, and he just admires him because Mr. Putin has made Mr. Trump's dreams come true in Russia. Strong man in charge of everything, and everyone just bows to him. No discussion, no opposition, no one ever saying no to him. Everyone obeying his orders. Isn't this a dream? Isn't this the ideal America that Mr. Trump wants to live in? And
but isn't that everyone's dream? Isn't that everyone's dream?
Well, I sincerely hope not. I believe in American people. I believe in the country which has given the world the first constitution, which has given the world the rule of law, which has played an incredible role in saving the world from the Nazism, from the First World War and the Second World War. Which has contributed to the world development probably more than any other country. Yes, the US has done its mistakes. I think those are well known. Those are, I hope, lessons of the past are learned, and there will be no such mistakes anymore. But I don't think that the American people would genuinely want to have anything like what they have in Russia. And I don't think that the American people deserve to have this. Of course, liberty and freedom is never given for free. And you guys know that only very well. But I do believe that the US will withstand these internal forces of destruction, which want to transform the American Republic in some kind of American dictatorship. I think there will be enough common sense in the US and enough instincts, healthy instincts, to preserve your institutions, to preserve the Constitution, and to continue to be the moral and political leaders of the free world. This is what's my sincere belief is.
Well, there are 40 million people in the Ukraine.
Yes, over 40. No one knows for sure. The last census we had was in 2001, so no one really. Approximately 40 million people. Yes.
They're 40. Well, and he can't silence all of them.
No. Actually, in fact, you cannot silence any one of them. If you watch footage when Russian women stop Ukrainian tank, Ukrainian.
I remember that. He said, "You're a piece of shit." Remember that? He said,
Yeah. You're a piece of shit. Well, how can you silence those people?
You cannot dictate what people are thinking.
Absolutely.
And as I said early on, people just want to be safe. That's what they want. And oftentimes they don't care who governs them as long as they're safe. My mother's family's from the Dominican Republic, and a lot of my older relatives, they're all deceased now, lived under Trujillo, the dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a young boy and I said, well, what was it like? They said, well, it was great. There was no crime. The economy was good. The only thing you couldn't do was talk about politics. But we'd sleep with the doors open and no one bothered you. And Trujillo didn't put up with crime. So they said, yeah, it was pretty good. But it goes back to people being safe. I'm a big believer that it's not about government, it's about economics. People really don't care who rule them, in a sense. I mean, absent atrocities, okay? They want to be safe. You can call yourself communist, you can call yourself capitalist, you can call yourself whatever you want. But if you have a job, you have a house or an apartment, you can feed your family, you can have a nice standard of living, that's what people really want. And I think that's what the Ukrainians want, and that's what they deserve. They deserve to prosper as a country of their own.
Absolutely.
One final question for you. What can, besides doing, podcasts like these or YouTube casts like these, what favor would you ask of the world? I mean, we've already talked about some things, but the most logical thing would be to keep spreading the word, right?
Yes. Please do. Please do not let the world forget about what's going on and what's already happened, because that's important. We need to bring those war criminals to justice. They need to be prosecuted. I want them to stand trial, and everyone in their sane mind want them to stand trial, because this is what they deserve. We want to know the answer to the very first question you posed. Why did they invade? What was the reason for this? Because this is, I think this is the crucial one. We need to know why this aggressive war started in the first place.
And that's $1 million question for another day. When you and I spoke briefly before the interview, I said a piece of trivia is that Putin is a black belt in judo. And I actually have one of his judo, well, I don't know how many he's written, but I have one judo book written by Putin, which, by the way, is not that good.
I'm sure he's written it, though.
No, I'm sure he didn't write it. And I've never seen Putin fight in judo. I've seen him with choreographed sparring, but never actually seen him fight. Not to say, when you're the KGB, you're going to win every one of your matches, right?
Yes, exactly.
No one's going to throw you. But the word judo means gentle way. And the mindset of judo is basically tranquility and peacefulness and avoid conflict. So and that's the subject for another podcast, how he has violated every precept of judo, the gentle way, and the theory or the philosophy behind the martial arts.
Yes.
Maybe I'll get some of my black belt friends to come in and we'll do.
Actually, one thing you could do, Rudy, that would be my personal request to you.
Absolutely.
If you could perhaps initiate the how can I say this, disqualification of Mr. Putin from the Judo Federation. Can you actually take his black belts away from him for violation of this ethical code of the judoka?
That's a good question, but I will call my Korean judo instructor. Judo is actually, Jigoro Kano started judo, and the Shotokan in Japan is the birthplace of judo, but I will definitely look into it.
Yeah.
And I have no problem. We can strip Putin of his black belt.
Yes. And I think it's of course it's very symbolic. But as a KGB guy, he loves symbols, and I think to him it will be a very personal defeat.
I think so. Well, let me see what campaign we can start off with my judo buddies and see if we can depose Putin of his black belt, right?
Yes.
Well, he may be watching this podcast too. He may send somebody to Jacksonville. I'll be ready for him.
Yeah. I'm sure you are. Yes. And you can tell him what the Ukrainian Marines told to the Russian Navy ship, right?
And what did they say?
Russian Navy ship, fuck off.
Oh, that. Okay, yeah. Okay, I didn't hear what they said that. And those guys are still alive, right?
Yeah, reportedly, yes.
They're alive. Well, my hat goes off to you for your courage, and I admire the fact that you and your family have decided to stay and tough it out. A number of the Ukrainians who have decided to stay, and you've got people all over the world rooting for you. I don't know that there's anybody outside of the Soviet Union who's rooting, for this thing. I just wish we can turn it into more affirmative action, more than just economic sanctions, but that's something for politicians to decide at some point. And I'm not privy to, neither are you, to what they're thinking or why they do things. But thank you so much. And let me just say to everyone who's listening, please, whatever you can do to help our brothers in the Ukraine, whether it's donate money, find a charity, find a cause, but because the Ukrainians are in dire need of many, many things. There are children in orphanages, there are people who are going to need food. They're going to need a lot of things. Please just
medication.
Go to, there are a lot of charities dealing with situations from the Ukraine. Please just do something, okay? And I want every one of you to like my channel. I want you to click it, and I want you to carry on this interview that I did today, because people need to know what's going on. And I thank you, my friend, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate. I wish you the best of luck. Feel free to email me if you want us to do anything at our end. I'll do what I can.
Thank you very much indeed, Rudy. I feel your support. I feel that you brothers are with us, and I thank you. And I think we'll prevail together. Thank you so very much.
We will, and I will go. I've been to the Ukraine. I almost got killed in a car accident there, but yes, by somebody who had a lot of vodka. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
but
no,
you should come back again. You should come back again.
Well, I don't drink, and so when I went there, I said, "Well, I don't drink. How do I say that?" And don't tell them you don't drink. What do I say? Tell them it's against your religion, and they won't bother you.
Exactly.
And that's what I said. It's against my religion.
Exactly.
And everyone said, "Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. You're still a lot of fun, even though you don't drink." Yeah.
Yeah, that's acceptable. Or you can say you have poor health, but probably you will like religion one more.
Well, I actually suggested that, and they said, no, because they'll think you're weak. Just say it's against your religion. Okay,
Ah,
that's what I did. And actually, the person I went to the Ukraine with was a person who did a number of Ukrainian adoptions for families throughout the U.S., a lot in St. Louis, and he was just killed on February 28th by Chechenian sniper coming out of a bunker. He spent half of his time in St. Louis and the other half in the Ukraine. And he was if you Google him, Serge Zevelever, there was news reporting on him. He was shot by a sniper.
Oh dear.
They interviewed his son. May he rest in peace. Thank you, my friend, for taking the time to talk to me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed, Rudy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Godspeed to you, my friend.
Bye-bye.